Thank you, Danielle. Hi, everyone. My name is Diane, and welcome to today's session on AR, VR, XR as a sales tool. So I'm here today to show you how you can leverage different client technology to enhance your client experience in the design development process, while also effectively communicating turnaround times and types of deliverables. So let's get started. Before diving too deep into the presentation, just a quick background about who I am. I am a workplace design strategist and a virtual experience specialist at CRI, which is a furniture dealership out here in the West Coast in San Francisco. And I have a background in design and project management, and I have been a CET user since 2015. And I am also a member of IDA Northern California chapter, and I've been a board member since 2018. I've served as the director of social media, VP of communications, as well as director of website management. And currently we are working on launching our new website that is going to go out at the end of this month. So that is very exciting. And so let's get started. So today's session will be a little bit different. Actually, I would actually encourage everybody to take out your phone and actually participate along with this interactive session. So this is a QR code, and you're welcome to take out your phone, aim it at it, and it should pull you up to the web link ahaslides.com/CETXR1. And so, okay, I see people already starting to log in down here. So awesome. You guys are doing it right. And then if you have any issues, like as long as you pull up a new browser, type this in. So a couple of housekeeping for this one is there is a feature in there where you can ask questions as well through this phone app, but we'd like to include all of the questions in the Zoom question and answer, so it'll be easier for Danielle and I to monitor that. But otherwise, during this entire session, you can keep that on your phone. You can interact with these sessions, and the presentation can go on both ways. So just wanted to get that involved. So it looks like we got 25 people. So let's get started. First question I want to ask everybody is rate your current knowledge on the topic of XR. So you actually have the opportunity to submit the answer. And if it's not working, just feel free to hit the refresh button and it should load correctly for you. All right. So, we got two people with comprehensive understanding of XR. All right. If we were having a live session, I actually asked you to come to the front of the room and present with me, but since this is a virtual presentation, I'm not sure if we can do that. So, all right, let's move on to the next question. So this is all great feedback. Thank you for providing that. Next question, VR, AR, MR, XR. What comes to mind when you hear all of these different acronyms? Yeah, that's just a whole bunch of acronyms. Feel free to put in whatever comes to your mind when you hear those acronyms. You can submit more than one word. We got about 5 seconds remaining here. Ooh, the Matrix, virtual reality. Yep, that is very correct. Augmented reality. Okay, some of you guys know what these acronyms mean. Awesome. All right, so it seems like most people know, think of virtual reality when you think of all those acronyms. So that's very accurate. Oculus, awesome. And then last but most important questions. Who put on pants today? Okay, we got more people. So we do have 7 very brave people willing to admit they didn't put on pants today. All right. Awesome. So yeah, these are all really great information. And but let's get back to the presentation itself. So before diving too deep into virtual reality, for those who are newer, we do have a lot of people who are new, and during this entire session, feel free to give me a laughing face, heart, thumbs up, and you can actually interact with any of these slides throughout the presentation. So for those, I see that we have some new people who don't know too much about XR. Then I'll just give you a brief understanding of what this technology is. So basically, I don't know if many of you guys have received ViewMaster as a child. I actually received that when I was a child for Christmas, and it's basically a film on a disc, and you can insert it into the ViewMaster, and as you click it, it'll kind of rotate across different images, and it'll actually help you see things in 3D. And how that works is basically 2 of the exact same images in film side by side, and then as you and just slightly offset. And then as you put it close enough to your face, you get this 3D effect. And so with that concept, we move on to moving pictures and what we call nowadays as videos. And so over here is the first kind of iteration of the Google Cardboard box that was first developed, and with the use of our smartphone, you have that same concept applied here, where it's just slightly offset, and then you put it up to your face, and then with the use of the accelerometer in your phone, it tracks your head movement so that the video will kind of adjust to the angle that you're viewing it at. So this is just a very like down and dirty concept of how that technology even works. So it's not some sort of crazy matrix out there, but it's very, realistic and easy for people to kind of grasp that understanding. And with this type of very basic technology, there's unfortunately no interaction with the basic, like the real world environment. So when you're putting this headset on, and if you're like choose to walk around your room, you have a very high likelihood of running into a furniture or a wall. So that's just some of the limitations to this specific virtual reality. And moving on to just more current technology, now that a couple years progressed, we have a lot of these great things that have come out by Facebook Oculus Go, Facebook Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, Google Daydream. The Facebook Oculus Rift and HTC Vive are like the OG, highly immersive, intensive experience that you can have in VR, and it often requires to be tethered to a gaming computer to help run that processing power. And then a lighter version that is now available that came out after those two is Facebook Oculus Go, and it's basically a standalone headset, so you no longer have to purchase an actual gaming computer to help run those programs, and it's built in, and they all come with controllers, so it's like a step above that cardboard experience. And then the Google Daydream, I would say,
things
things
and
that
how
companies like
give our
IKEA
customers like
created, where
a
they
different
have
kind of
this
experience.
room.
We were so excited about the idea.
But basically, the person on the right is in this environment, they put on the headset, and they're able to see what you're viewing now, and they can, pick and choose their furniture options and, place them, adjust the colors, etc. So don't want to spend too much time on this, but this will kind of give you a quick idea of what VR is. So moving on to AR, what is AR? And I see some of you guys have mentioned augmented reality, so I know some of you know what that means. With augmented reality, it's a little bit different. It actually is, you can experience that through either your smartphone or your tablet, and something that was very popular a couple years back when it was launched was the Pokemon Go, where just hundreds of people, maybe you did it, maybe your children did it, or even your parents were going around playing this. So that is an example of augmented reality, and it's basically a virtual image overlaid in front of your real physical space. So it uses the technology of your either smartphone or tablet lenses, and then overlay either the furniture or cabinet or Pokemon into the physical space. So that is kind of the biggest difference between virtual reality and augmented reality. And it really depends sometimes if you're using, the Apple iOS technology or Android, just depending on which platform you're on. Sometimes there are limitations to the available app in that specific area. And then for smartphones and tablets, you also have to consider the technology is most effective if you have a depth sensing lens, and that is not available in every single technology that is older. So if you have something 2017 or later, you have a higher chance of having augmented reality work and be compatible with your phone and tablet. But if you have any technology that's a little bit earlier than that, it may not be compatible. So that's just something to be aware of when you're considering augmented reality as a type of deliverable for your clients. And then we'll just show you a quick video as well as what you can do with augmented reality. So this person specifically, is dropping a table, a virtual table in their space, and then they choose a chair, kind of rotate it, position it to the right location, and add something on the wall. And these are things that don't exist in the physical space, but they use the camera option to kind of show what can exist here. So that is an example. And then moving on to MR, which stands for mixed reality. And Some of these examples are, Google Glass, Microsoft HoloLens, HP, Microsoft Reverb G2, HTC Vive Pro, and these are all available technology. And you could look at the HTC Vive Pro and be like, this looks very similar to the VR one that you showed. Well, the biggest difference between this one and the VR option I showed is this one actually comes with built-in cameras. So you can see it's a mixture. Mixed reality is a mixture of virtual reality and augmented reality mixed together. So Microsoft actually does a very good job. I explained this. So I'll kind of let you guys
Mixed reality
watch
breaks
this
down
here.
the barriers between physical and virtual realities. Let's see how we can alter realities across people, places, and objects. Here we have a real office, populated with real things. Let's now adjust reality by adding virtual objects to this physical space. Notice how these objects are aware of the real surfaces in the office. Next, let's replace the real person with an avatar. This allows her to be present even though she is not physically in the room. Now let's adjust the environment itself and make it virtual. Notice how the virtual objects and avatar continue to persist. Finally, let's tie back this entire virtual scene to the original physical room. A subtle boundary grid can reveal real obstacles, making it safer to walk around this virtual environment. Mixed reality unlocks exciting new experiences that merge the physical and the virtual worlds.
All right, so hopefully this will get you guys a better understanding of AR, VR, and MR. And now to the finale, XR. What is XR? So that is basically the big umbrella that encompasses VR, AR, MR. All of these technology that you saw goes under XR, which stands for extended reality. And that is basically a nod to math, and how you use the X variable that can represent any number, and in this case, any of these letters. And the reason this is more standardized in the VR industry is because there's a lot of oftentimes debate in terms of technicality, trying to differentiate if this technology is exactly VR or AR or MR. And so just to do away with all of that debate, we kind of just put it under XR. And this way, when you're talking to somebody, you don't have to go through the entire acronym. You can just refer it to XR, and that would simplify everything. So that's why the industry came up with XR, to kind of standardize the discussion. And that is what it is today. So with XR, now that we've established what it is, how do we use that as a sales tool? So some of the questions that you might ask is, have you ever received requests to provide XR deliverables? And is the design department the designated subject matter expert regarding XR? And maybe have you been asked to provide the timeline or the budget for XR deliverables? So some of these things are like addressing specifically number 2. I also want to just put everything in perspective in that virtual reality and augmented reality, these type of technology became available to the mass consumer market pretty recently in 2016. And so this industry is pretty new, and we're still at the front end frontier land of all of this technology. It's rapidly changing as well. I've recently attended a conference where there was this VR expert who wrote a book trying to document all the available technology so then they can share and educate with everybody. But he said that after he finished the book, before he was even able to publish it, he went back and reread some chapters and realized some of the information was completely outdated, even before he finished the book. So that's just how fast this industry is moving and shifting in terms of technology. So maybe when you're learning these types of technology, you don't have to be stuck on a specific type of service or software or something like that, but just understanding the big picture and the concept of it would be very helpful in this industry. And then there'll be a lot of options that is available in the market, and then just seeing what sticks at the end. So that's just for complete awareness, so that if people really look to you to be the subject matter expert, it's okay to not know everything that is happening in this industry, because it is evolving. And then also the question, have you ever been asked to provide a timeline or a budget for the XR deliverable? My best approach for that question is just similar to how I would approach any design deliverable. Like, for example, if a salesperson or an account manager asks me for a rendering, to me, a rendering could mean a whole variety of things. Are you looking for a 2D line render, or are you looking for just a whitewash background with just the furniture in there, or are you looking for a completely rendered with all the environments? So it's always better to ask and follow up with those questions with more questions. And we can go into more detail later, but just understanding the scope and the intent of these requests will ultimately help you in creating really good deliverables. And then, of course, for some of you guys giving me this face, going, no, I have not received these requests. Why does XR matter? Well, that's a great question. XR matters because I'm going to kind of go on my stage right now and kind of preach to all of you guys in this age of physical distancing and virtual everything, and just, you know, the fact that this whole event is also virtual. Remote work and presentation formats are rapidly evolving to meet the immediate needs of our industry. So virtual presentation formats are becoming necessary tools for communicating project proposals to clients, whether we prefer it or not. In a post-pandemic world, technology like these are no longer a nice to have, but a must-have in staying relevant and placing ourselves one step ahead of our competitors. So as designers, even if you're not immediately being asked to provide these sort of virtual deliverables, we must plan for an uptick of questions or requests on virtual design development, presentation formats, and deliverables to remain competitive in the job market. And with any new technology and process adoption, this seminar my goal is to help guide you through this transition period on how you can communicate the type of deliverable and necessary turnaround times while effectively managing and setting expectations from project kickoff to completion. So my goal today is to empower you and to help you build the confidence to tackle XR as a deliverable. So thank you all for joining me on this. So yeah, back to the thing, keep questions, right? So asking the right questions over here is, you know, there are internal questions to ask as well. What are the existing skill set in your design department and IT department? So that's something to consider, because this one isn't just limited to the design department. Some of the technology, if you're trying to make a very intense, like immersive, fully immersive experience, you may require looping in your IT department to help you with that. So if you have that resource, then that is something that you can provide. But if you have limited resources on that end, maybe you'll have to consider a lighter XR deliverable option. And then what is the budget and what are your resources? So very similar to before, resources and also budget. You know, if you only have $10 on this project, but you already have CET and Ulio subscriptions, then you may want to consider providing one of those, you know, Google Cardboard headsets that's like $5 off of Amazon. And then you can maybe mail that option to your client for their viewing experience. But if you have a larger budget, maybe around $2,000 to $3,000, then you might be able to invest in a gaming computer as well as an Oculus or HTC Vive headset for a fully immersive experience. So just depending on what the budget is available and what your resources are, that will help you define and narrow down the type of deliverables that you are able to provide. And then, do you have a 3D model or library? So that is very helpful in making the 3D model and building creation faster. You don't want to build anything from scratch, and I wouldn't recommend you guys to build your furniture models from scratch unless it's like a very custom piece like a reception desk or something like that. But it's good to build out your 3D model so that the more iterations you have in the future, if you're creating, you can build off of the existing model library that you have, and that will actually speed up your design process exponentially moving forward. And then what product lines are you selling or partnered with? So this is a really important question because, you know, if you work at a dealership that, you know, is maybe Steelcase, Hayworth, Herman Miller or Kimball, or those larger companies that already have 3D models built, then these are great jumping off points to create your XR deliverable. And then for, you know, ancillary furniture, I remember back in 2016, there wasn't many 3D model options available at all, but the ancillary industry is moving in that industry, and they're realizing that this is the direction in terms of being able to better sell their ancillary furniture. For designers, they often would, you know, just grab their 3D model and throw it in, and that is something that is needed in our industry. So now fast forward to 2020, a big number of ancillary furniture companies provide 3D models now. So you can go out there, go to the website and download that as well. And if you can't find it, a lot of times the reps will be able to help you find those resources for you. So these are just things to save a lot of time, help you narrow down your types of deliverables. And then Asking external questions is, who is your client? What is their communication preference? And what is your client's comfort level with technology? These are really important because if you have a client who is fine with the existing process, they're fine looking at a 2D plan, 2D line drawings, and they're happy, everything's good, there is no reason to pitch an XR deliverable because then you're just creating work for yourself. If whatever is working now, my job is to tell you to keep your existing process. This is XR deliverable is better for clients who may struggle with visualizing 3D images, and if they look at a floor plan, they're not able to understand what that means. And there are people out there like that, and so XR deliverable is here to help with these types of unique clients. And well, they're not so unique anymore. Now a lot of people are very visual, so there is a demand for that. And then another question is, what phone do they use? And that can actually give you a whole bunch of answers in terms of understanding your client. And some of it is also stereotyping, but it might help, if you're not able to ask very specific questions. So, sometimes I look at their phone, if they're an Apple user, sometimes they prefer an experience that is curated for them. They want you to be able to create and lead the way in that pitch process. And then if your client has an Android phone, maybe they're the type of people who like to customize their own experience. So they would like to drive themselves through that experience rather than have you show it to them. So those are things to consider. And then also, literally, what phone do they use? Because if they are still on a flip phone, that would really limit the type of deliverable that you can provide them, because some of them require a smartphone. And then also, if they have a phone that is before 2017, there's a chance that they don't have an integrated depth sensing lens in their phone, so that they can't experience the augmented reality deliverable that you're providing them. So just check what their phone is, and that will actually give you a lot of information about who they are and what would be the best type of deliverable for that clientele. Moving on to deliverables now. So with deliverables, these that I'm showing here are not XR deliverables. I just wanted to kind of take a step back and show how I communicate in terms of negotiating timelines and understanding the type of intent it's trying to meet. So I will create something like a visual shopping list. So, when a salesperson or account person comes to me and they're like, can I get a rendering for this project? They might be thinking option D, fully rendered with all the lighting, accessories, decor, and be like, I need it by tomorrow. Well, that is not going to be realistic if you're building everything from scratch. So this is a great way to kind of pull up a visual and be like, all right, so where are we in this process? If they're saying, they've never even met with the client yet, they don't know what the programming needs are, have no finishes picked out, and they're still developing the typical, then you would point maybe at something more along the lines of option A, because then you're like, okay, well, if we don't want to distract them with everything else that's happening, let's focus on the programming. And sometimes when you show finishes before you figure out the programming, they might be so stuck on the finishes and not be able to move on from that point. So I would often recommend, a perspective line drawing with an elevation, so you can just get to the point in terms of programming needs, and then I can get that to you in the next hour. So this is something that can be quickly thrown together and help you use that time to build your 3D model. And then once they take it back to the client, they come back, the client's like, all right, that programming works, let's move on to the finishes. Then you already have your 3D model already built out, then you can apply the finishes. And then it doesn't matter if it's in an open office, it doesn't really matter what the architectural features are, then you can just do a whitewash background, save a lot of time, bam, you got that out, option B done. And then for option C, it's, maybe in a private office where the walls and maybe there's a column in that private office, the architecture does matter, but you're not specifying and selling, architectural finishes to them. So you can just do a whitewash wall, very basic flooring, and show this to them as well. And so these are very quick options, and these are all options that you can create using CET and PhotoLab. So it's things that you can already do very quick. And help negotiate that timeline with your salespeople. And so option D, when you get to this point, you're no longer just trying to sell a workstation or a chair, you're trying to sell the vision. And if your salesperson comes back and is like, no, I'm trying to do a wow factor at this point, then this is something that you can then work with them on and let them know it does take a little bit longer, maybe a week, and then it does take maybe overnight rendering for this to, collect all of the models, finishes, and make the lighting perfect and render that out. And so you can create that in CET and Photolab, but there's also other rendering softwares, including 3D Max, Rhino, V-Ray, and Photoshop as well. And so again, just making sure that the salespeople understand this is mainly for seeking wow factor and focusing on storytelling rather than trying to sell a specific product, because you might often just distract them with too many things going on. All right, so now that we have that down, the general process to create any of those deliverables is using CET, going in Photolab, and then creating a perspective render. And so to take that to the next step in creating a VR deliverable process, it's starting off at the same point. You're building your 3D model in CET, taking it into Photolab, but in this case, you create a 360 render instead that you can then export into Ulio VR. And today's session, I'm not going to show you how to create renderings. There are other sessions available, but this is more of a higher conceptual explanation of how to approach this. And then you finally host it through your either smartphone or tablet or monitor. So this is kind of taking it to the next step. And so XR visual shopping list, similar to how I've organized the usual rendering shopping list, whatever I'm showing first will be what takes the least time and the least resources. And then as we progress, it starts taking a little bit longer in terms of timeline and turnaround. So for your XR visual shopping list, option 1. This one is something that all of you guys today can immediately start using. And this is all free, basically, as long as you have your smartphone that has a panorama camera setting. That is basically free if you already have it. Software, Google Cardboard app, it is free as well. We all love free. And then an example of how I would use this is basically taking a 360 panorama photo, and it's used to track and document furniture install progress. And this is very helpful in situations where, specifically for the image that I'm showing below, I basically had an installation where the client ordered a whole bunch of shelves and they didn't know exactly where they wanted to place it yet. And so after we ordered everything, then they're like, okay, we want to put it in this specific storage room. At the time of install, we went in and we realized, you know, there's this bracing here that interferes with the shelf. So we weren't able to install and place all the shelves in that room. So rather than, you know, call it a day, everybody go home and have to come back later to fix it, we just took a 360 photo, shot it over to the client. They were able to understand in the context of the environment where the X bracing was. We didn't have to shoot like 5 different photos either and then like tell them exactly which wall they were looking at. In a 360 image, that information is all there, and all they have to do is take a look at the entire room and then let us know where to ship things. So we were able to finish it that day, you know, without having to come back and fix that afterwards. So this is great for clients who are very hands-on and involved with the installation process. And this is also very helpful for clients who want to track and report the installation process. And you know, nowadays with COVID-19, not everybody is able to show up on site, and it's actually, you know, discouraged from having too many people on site at the same time. So this is a perfect way you can use to communicate with people who aren't there. And also, if you have a client who has maybe an autoimmune issue and, you know, have concerns about physically showing up, this is something that you can immediately use and can kind of share the update every day. At the end of the day, your installer will take a 360 photo and then shoot it over to the client. So it keeps them looped in without needing them to actually be on site. So the next level up would be option 2, 360 photo showroom. So just same concept as what I showed you earlier, but just a more elevated in terms of the type of photo quality that you're providing. So that would require a GoPro Max, Kandao QCam 8K 360, or an Insta 360 camera. These are all just recommendations. There are a lot of other options available in the market. And so in this case, you would host it through Ulio, and then or you can also host like Ulio, because they can provide a more integrated experience for you. And so this is just more elevated. And then this is great if you're trying to showcase a, you know, physical showroom that is rotating. So maybe you have some furniture you want to showcase, and then after a month you want to rotate it out for other options, you can take a 360 photo each time and then kind of archive it so that when a client comes back maybe 2 or 3 months later and they're like, oh yeah, 2 months ago I saw this blue lounge chair and I really liked it. What was that again? And so you can kind of go back and like take an image and be like, is this the chair that you're talking about? So this is a great way to document these rotating showrooms. And it's also great for if you just finished a client project and with their permission, you can take a 360 image and upload it to your website so that future potential clients can review your past projects and be like, oh, this looks really nice. And then, reach out to you for an opportunity. And this is great for clients who are busy and or not local and who may just be unable to visit your showroom. And again, for clients who may have autoimmune deficiencies so that they don't have to physically show up to a room and expose themselves to potential viruses. And other options is, might be actually a preference for your salesperson where you have somebody who just wants to come and tour your showroom, but they have no idea what they want and they just want idea starters. So actually save your salesperson's time. They can just send this to them and not have to, guide them through the entire experience. They can explore it themselves. So these are some initial examples. So this one is I just wanted to show you guys if you want to aim your camera at the QR code again or visit the Yulia link above. This is an example of a Steelcase Neocon 2018 showroom. And once you go into that experience in your phone, you can see that there's, different hot spots you can explore and kind of just go through a self-guided tour. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide just because you can always come back later. This is recorded and you can experience and play around with this a little bit more on your afterwards. And so moving on to option 3, the VR showroom. So that's very similar to the 360 showroom, but in this case, it's built out completely virtually. And it's rather than taking a photo, you're creating the environment in CET and then doing a 360 render of that. So this will require, a computer with graphics card. Software would be Ulio and CET. And you can also use SketchUp, 3D Max, or Rhino in this case. And then some use cases as coined by Ulio, you can create an infinite showroom, meaning you create an architectural build and you can literally rotate as much furniture out and swap it for whatever you need and update the finishes because everything's virtual. There's like no waste. There's, all virtual. And so this is also great for areas with limited or expensive real estate, and you literally don't have a whole room to show all of your product lines. So this is a great option. And then it's also great for bid opportunities where maybe you won't be able to present directly to a client, but you will kind of want to show them all the available options. So you can create the experience and actually create this step-by-step instruction and just email it to them. Or you can also mail it to them with a cardboard headset, and so that they can kind of experience that. So these are all really creative options you can use. And then the client type would be very similar to the ones who like to kind of self-drive and explore it themselves. All right. And then over here is an example of an Alarmir showroom that was created using and hosted in Ulio. So feel free to jump in with the QR code or visit the web link. And in this experience, you can see that they've also included audio, so you can kind of do a self-guided tour through that entire experience. And yeah, I won't stay on this slide too long either because you can explore that afterwards as well. All right, so moving on to option 4, this one I think a lot of people already know is a 360 video fly-through experience. And this is actually an example we pulled from Configura. And so congratulations, Chirag Patel from Business Interiors. Basically, it's a video fly-through and it would require a hardware of computer with graphics card, Ulio and CET, same thing. You can also use SketchUp, 3D Max, or Rhino. And this use case would be walking a client through a narration. And at this point, they're no longer focusing on just idea starters. Like you're really trying to focus them in on the specific product that you're trying to sell to them. So you can direct their vision and attention through that entire fly through. And then this is also great where you can't walk your client through a showroom, but you have, again, specific things you want to show them. And then This is great for clients who prefer to be led through a space. They don't want to self-explore. And then this might be great for clients who may not be as tech savvy. And so this would not require them to follow those step-by-step instructions, use their smartphone or anything. You can literally just send them a link and they can view it through their computer monitor. And nowadays, everybody knows how to watch a video. So this would be a great option for these types of clients. And then lastly, option 5 is what I call a virtual mockup. So this one is, I just want to put it out there, you can't create this in CET, but I do want to just provide this option for you so you're aware of what can be offered in terms of XR deliverable. This one, in terms of hardware, you will require a gaming computer as well as an Oculus or HTC Vive for a fully immersive experience. The software you would need is Unity, and that is a gaming engine. And so it's very similar to CET, but this is what gamers, gaming developers use to create, gaming experiences. And it does require some knowledge of coding. So it just really depends on what your comfort level is and if you're able to create something like that. But if you are unable to or don't have the resources to, you can also contract it out to a third-party company. So in this case, Externa CGI is a company that could provide that type of service. And then in terms of use case, it's great for communicating the feel and scale of the furniture because it actually tracks to the height. And so when you're trying to explain the scale and show it to them in a room, they can actually experience that. It's also if you're trying to reduce the cost and need for inventory. And what I mean by that is, I call it a virtual mockup because it could be an alternate to a physical mockup. So if you have a client who prefers or wants to have a physical mockup, but they may not have the time for you to pull the specs together, select all the finishes, book it, wait for the lead time, and then install it. And then also afterwards having to figure out how to dispose of it or reuse it or store it. Virtual reality makes all of that go away. And you can just literally create everything completely virtual for them to explore and test out their different mock-up options. And so this does take a lot more time to create and build as well as resources. But if you're comparing it to the cost of a physical mock-up, that timeline as well as the cost required to build a physical mock-up could be offset using this type of deliverable. And this also has the ability to track your clients' clicks and views so that you can get a full understanding of what are they interested in and what are they looking at. And so the type of client for this type of deliverable, you would need them to be very comfortable with technology. The clients who prefers to self-drive and explore, because they do have to have their controllers and kind of pick and choose their options. So if you have your client's a gamer, then this may be the perfect deliverable for them. All right, so here is a quick video of the deliverable. So this is an example. This is actually me trying this out where you're in a physical showroom and I'm literally picking and choosing the different options. And in this case, you would curate, the available options for your client so they can kind of pick and choose. And then once, they're happy with their selections, then you just take a snapshot and document that. So you can see this is a showroom and there's 3 other mock-up available as well for them to explore, and you can actually teleport throughout that room and kind of jump around and see what's important and explore. All right. So and then option 6, this one I put at the very end, not because this is takes the longest or the most resources, but I wanted to put it in there because augmented reality was something that was available in CET using Instant AR and Simply Augmented. And so as I was pulling this together, I actually realized for this presentation, I was like, wait, where did these go? So it's actually been discontinued in CET, and that kind of ties back to, this is the frontier. Technology will always continue to change and shift. So this is just something that is very common that you will experience in the XR world. So some alternate options, if you do still want to provide AR deliverables, just make sure that the hardware you're using, smartphone and tablet, is 2017 or newer. And then software that you can use could be Platar AR or View AR. And again, you should vet out these different companies before you go ahead and provide these types of deliverables. Just so that you're aware, technology is constantly adjusting and shifting. So for a good use case for AR deliverable is if you're trying to help your client visualize a specific cluster in an existing space. So, you have an existing office and you're like, okay, how would this piece of lounge furniture fit in the context? So you can actually shoot them the 3D model. They can pull it up on their tablet or phone and kind of check it out. This is also great if you're a vendor and you're trying to show a recently released chair, but you don't have the time to ship it over to a client since it just got released yesterday. So if your client is open to viewing it in augmented reality, you can just shoot them the 3D model and then they can mess around with it in their phone and app and just see if they like it or not. But the thing is, I want to call out that if your client is interested in a sit test or for ergonomic reasons and comfort reasons, augmented reality cannot replace that, just because ergonomy and comfort level is a physical thing. So you have to, I would still recommend sending physical demos if that's the case. And then this is great for clients who prefer communicating via text or cell phones, prefers to self-drive or explore, and are very comfortable with technology such as tablets and smartphones. So now that we have all the different types of XR technology hashed out, you also have to think about your client experience. So in your client experience, really think about your audience. Your client is human. He, she, or they will feel emotions as well as motions. And what I mean by that is people may feel embarrassed sticking something, a foreign object, to their face for the first time while everyone is watching them, right? That is not very comfortable at all. And so you just got to keep that in mind when you're creating that experience for them. And then also they will feel motion. And that, I mean, in terms of cyber sickness, that is a concept in the XR world. It's very similar to motion sickness, seasickness, etc., where if you move around too fast, you can feel nausea. And that is something I just wanted to put out there. And that's something that would be helpful in communicating to your clients so that you can discourage them from flinging their head around during that experience and creating that cyber sickness. And so everyone reacts to it differently, just like seasickness and all of that. So as long as they're aware about it, then that is good. And there's a lot of research that has been going into cyber sickness studies, and a way to mitigate cyber sickness is a higher refresh rate for whatever your client is viewing. And so technology like the HTC Vive and Oculus put in a lot of money to research that and create an experience to mitigate cyber sickness. But then if you're having your client view it through their smartphone and all of that, there's a higher likelihood of them getting cyber sickness. So be aware, and that is all. For the physical environment that you're setting up for your client, important questions is to ask, are you presenting remotely or in person? So if you're presenting remotely, make sure you send the step-by-step process, because they may not always know how to use or go and view that experience. So, and then if you're presenting it in person, this is an example of a lounge layout I would recommend. Maybe not in a big boardroom where you're surrounded by glass walls and it creates kind of a fishbowl effect and everyone can watch you while the person is putting on a headset and kind of walking around. Maybe put it in the corner of your office away from everyone's eyes, have a more of a lounge setup so it feels less formal so that they can feel more comfortable. Maybe put laptop tables so that you can put the headset on there, but then if they're in the experience, you can easily move that out of the way so you can avoid people from banging into the furniture. And I would often recommend having finishes in that room that has matte finish and not reflective. And part of that is just simply if they touch or run into it, it doesn't feel as cold, since their senses are more heightened when you're kind of not seeing where you actually are. And also from a technical point of view, if you are setting up a Oculus or Vive experience, they often come with light boxes or external sensors that you would mount to the room. And these often don't do so well in areas with highly reflective surfaces. It may actually mess up the tracking. So if you have like a window or something like that, maybe cover it up with curtains, pull the blinds down or something like that. So these are things to keep in mind. And also lastly, make sure to provide options. So if you're meeting with clients and maybe there's 3 to 4 people there, and maybe bring more than just one headset so that not everybody is staring at that one person trying it out. Maybe bring 2 to 3 options so that they can all casually pick up the experience and experience it themselves. And now that we have the physical environment nailed down, also don't forget the storytelling aspect of it. Build the storytelling into XR. It's great to keep things general because I think once you've put a lot of effort into creating a fully immersive environment, you're not just trying to sell one piece of furniture. So try to sell your vision and your idea and sell them on your design process and the complete experience. And I think that will be the most effective in terms of providing an XR deliverable. So, with all of this done, I just wanted to share with you some of these trailblazing designers that have been doing and providing these services and creating XR deliverables. So one example is Charles Imperial. I met him out here in San Francisco, and there isn't too many interior designers who's this obsessed about XR as I am. And after I met him at an event, we just hit it off, and he is now with me in IDA, and we kind of just, share ideas and knowledge in terms of best practices as well. So this has been a very fun experience, meeting people who share similar passions. And he's been in the industry for 20 plus years as an interior architecture and designer. He focuses on high-end residential as well as commercial design. And then he's basically the go-to designer at his office to bring spaces to life through VR. And an example of something that he created, it was actually a example I had shown you earlier, which is the Alamir VR showroom. And what he wanted to let you guys know is, the key is to provide the end user with enough content and ease of use that they can do their own self-guided tour. And with VR, you have the opportunity to create that immersive experience. And his process of, in terms of creating this deliverable is, first step, understanding the client vision. And once he has that understanding, he then collects all the content and the audio and the finishes, etc., 3D models. He, in this case, used 3ds Max to create the rendering and then imported it into Ulio. He then dropped in all the content and audio that you see in here and created that experience. So moving on to the next designer, Michelle Melendez. She is the VP of Design in Florida. And she is a design passionate furniture nerd and a go-getter. And her mission is to design spaces where people can unchain their creativity and develop to their full potential. So for her, this one's actually a unique experience in that she started off with 0 VR experience. She said none of her internal design team have VR experience either, but she was like, you know what, let's just try it anyway. So she partnered it up with an external contractor. And then how she partnered up with them is basically her internal team prepped their CET files. They documented the ceiling height, that's very important in terms of VR, and then collected and built out their 3D furniture model, got all of the texture, image files, paint color, flooring, fabric, etc., packaged it all up, sent it to their external contractor. And then after 2 weeks, they were able to submit that for a bid, and they actually won that bid. And I think it was for the Tampa hospital. And so that was a very exciting story to see, like, a team with 0 experience, but still able to provide an XR deliverable. And then lastly, Brian Knapp, I just wanted to share, he is the co-founder, president, and creative director of Externa CGI. He began his career as an office furniture designer, first for Hayworth and then later for Steelcase. And now he runs a company that provides CG animation and rendering studio. And so throughout, his various career paths, he has done so many different things, including radio DJ, comic book artist, etc. And they all have a common thread of storytelling, which is very interesting. And you can see that in the type of deliverables that he creates for you. So an example I had showed you, which is a fully immersive VR mockup, that is a demo that he created, and his team also created. So his team possessed the technical expertise and unique abilities to thoroughly understand their clients' products, processes, and services. So this allows them to meticulously craft their stories through animation, visualization, as well as VR. And the reason why I'm sharing all these is, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And for me, I love using CET Designer, and I just love CET Experience as well, because sometimes, as much as we love the software, you run into technical issues, and that's just the nature of it. You run into a bug and you have to do a feature request because you're like, I really wish they could do this. in these situations, I feel like it's always great to have a community where you can gather, share your frustrations. It's better to be frustrated with a whole bunch of other frustrated people than just frustrated by yourself. Because once you're frustrated with a whole bunch of other people, you'll start bouncing ideas off of each other. And then somebody might be like, hey, I ran into the same issue. This is what I did as a workaround. So this is why I just love CET experience, because you're able to share best practices, ideas, and tips and tricks with each other. And you're just not just limited to your direct peers in your specific company. So, just wanted to put it out there. So I just want to close out the presentation with just a couple additional follow-up questions. So if you are no longer logged in, feel free to jump back in again. And I just wanted to follow up with a couple more questions. So again,
Diane, we had a couple questions in the Q&A box as well that I wanted to share with you.
Oh, sure.
So we had a question, it looks like, let me scroll up here, from Valerie. She said, thoughts on SketchUp with V-Ray for renderings or fly-throughs with Ulio?
That they are compatible. So I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but like it depends on your, if you're very comfortable with SketchUp as well as V-Ray, then I would recommend using that and then importing it into Ulio. But in terms of the exact technical accommodation, I think reaching out directly to Ulio if you run into any technical issues, that would be more helpful, since I'm not a specific Ulio person.
100%, totally agree with that. We also had a question from Sarah. So she said, in this pandemic world, we have been giving more and more of these XR deliverables away for free. Is that been the norm for anyone else?
That depends. If you're trying to provide an XR deliverable for a bid process, then yeah, that would be part of the bid package. But a lot of times, something like creating a virtual mockup, that is something you can totally package up and sell. And you have the dollar to show and the timeline as well, because if you have a physical demo or a mockup that you're trying to create, kind of the estimated timeline it would take to create that spec, order it, deliver it, and install it. So that timeline, however long or short it takes for your company, you can kind of use that and leverage it, and then say, well, with XR deliverable, it'll take 2 weeks instead of maybe 5 to 6 weeks. And then in terms of cost, how much they would pay to buy the physical product, that in turn you can create a more competitive pricing, and then just compare back and forth and just maybe bring your price down a little bit. So that is a way you can sell your different type of deliverables. But in the meantime, a lot of it is also just having your client understand what XR deliverable is. So this is why to them it might just be a concept, right? And so providing them with the visual shopping list so that they can literally see the different type of deliverables could also help you package it up and sell that as a service as well. So in the beginning, maybe for bids, yeah, you throw it in there just to show them what you can do, but there are opportunities there. So I hope that answered the question.
I think that's a great point there to say that maybe in the beginning introduce them, and then once they get a feel for that, you can start selling that as a service. Mm-hmm. We had a question from Sarah here. She might need to elaborate on this, but she asked, or best to ask, what happened in 2017. So I think you mentioned something during your presentation that happened in 2017.
So the depth sensing lenses were not integrated into smartphones and tablets before that timeline. And then eventually it just became a insider knowledge that we knew that after 2017, all the smartphone companies integrated that into their lenses. So the public there was no announcement really about that, but it just happened, and that's why 2017 is kind of the timeline where I'm able to kind of have a feel of when the technology is integrated so that you can do AR. And the reason I know is because back in 2016, I went to a VR hackathon, and we were actually using the Google Tango, which had the depth sensing lens, and back then none of our smartphone had it, so we had to use that specific technology. But then during that whole session, they were talking about how down the line it is now going to be integrated into everyone's smartphone, so now everyone has access to it, and they don't have to just use and buy the Google Tango to make that work. So yeah, now Google Tango is no longer something that's available, but that's because everyone has it now. So that's what happened in 2017.
Wow, I learned something new about this every day. Okay, so that was a good answer there. We have another one from Sarah that said, have you had any issues where the real life product installed doesn't quite match what's seen virtually? It's easier to make something look perfect in the virtual world, but we often have to remind our clients to still look at fabric finishes, etc. in real life because everyone's visual experience is different.
Yes, that you got straight to the point. Color is very subjective, and so that is something that is difficult to replace. So when you're showing them in a virtual environment, it's mainly to get the feel and the scale of things, and then color is basically a general feel, but you can't really specify the exact fabric. You should always show up to those meetings with like a fabric swatch as well, and that would actually help them feel it as well. Like, feeling and color is something that is the limitation of XR technology. But those are things that you could easily mail to them rather than having to send them an entire workstation, So those are things that you can kind of pick and choose what's important. And that's the same thing with like sit test I mentioned. That's something that would be difficult to replace if you're evaluating ergonomics.
I think that was a great question and a great point there. We have another question from Dave. He's wondering if there is a direct path between CET and programs like Rhino or 3ds Max.
If they're between Rhino and 3DX Max, that one I haven't messed with that myself, so that's something I don't think I have the technical expertise to speak to. So I would recommend, reaching out to them specifically on questions like that. So apologies.
No problem there. I can speak to that one a little bit. We don't have a complete export to Rhino or 3ds Max, but I do know some designers have used it. Some have exported back out to a DWG file. So if you can get out to that format and use it that way, sometimes that's helpful. But there is no set export right to those programs. Next question, Colleen mentioned, it sounds like Ulio is the default option for producing XR through CET. Do you recommend Ulio Jump or standard Ulio? We've had issues in testing with Jump, not handling SketchUp and other ancillary 3D symbols in the same way that they are rendering for us.
So I know Ulio Jump is pretty new and it launched in the last year or so. So they all, like just with any software, have things to work out. But I think there's a lot of opportunities in the services that they offer in making the rendering process really fast compared to before. And but in terms of technicalities and that, I think reaching out to Ulio specifically with those type of questions, they can actually then directly address these concerns and issues that you run into and help fix that. So it's like the same thing in CET where we submit a feature request or a bug issue. Working directly with them will help solve and work through those issues.
100% agree with that. We do have 2 additional questions, but I did want to mention we are getting to the 2:10 mark here, so we do have our break wrapping up. So if you have to hop off and get to another session, please feel free to do so. If there are any additional questions, we can stay on here for just a brief moment and answer those, but there is also the forum, so please feel free to head out to the forum. We have a forum post running for the CET experience, so you can also post your questions there. If you are looking to get CEU credit, please don't forget to fill out that CEU form. You're going to sign with my name, Danielle Herka, so my initials are DH there. There also is a live stream happening right now, so feel free to hop on that if you need a moment before your next session. Again, the next session starts at 2:40. All right, Dan, I just have a couple more questions here that I want to wrap up while people are hopping off. So Colleen had mentioned, does Plattar, it's Plattar, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, AR View AR tie into CET? Is there an alternative to Ulio?
No, currently these aren't tied directly into CET. What we had before that has been discontinued. They had a direct tie-in. So that's something just to keep an eye out for. If you want something like augmented reality as a service that can tie directly to CET, I would just recommend sending a feature request so that CET knows that that's something that you wish that you could do. The other services are just some other option that is available, but yeah, it doesn't tie in directly to CET.
Awesome. And then one more from Colleen. Can you work in CET export to 3DS then to VR for a better result than CET straight to Helio? I think we kind of answered this a little bit. I don't know if, Diane, you have any experience with working with 3DS and then instead of doing CET straight to Helio.
It just depends on exactly how you want your deliverable to look. Just using the different rendering softwares, you can kind of get a different look and feel. And so I personally haven't taken the CET model and exported it to 3DS, but I also know you can build everything directly from 3DS. And I think in this case, I would actually connect you directly to Charles, who did create that deliverable, and that's something that he can provide additional like technical insight on.
Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap it up for all of our questions that we have here. So again, please feel free to hop off and take a break here. Again, there's content on the live session, and we will see you if you hop back on for the session at 2:40, or if you head into another session. Thank you so much for joining Diane and I.
All right. Thank you, everyone.